just after I turned 9 was the first time, and I just ran away for a couple of weeks. I lived out in this trailer in the back of a gas station. I was like about 3 or something like that when I was living on the chicken farm. And then we went back to Jersey a year later after my father got remarried. And then we just lived in all these different towns in Jersey.
Okay, so this is you're living with your stepmother and your father now.
That was at that point.
Okay.
But then
But
when
your father's gone all the time,
Right.
out to sea, so you're pretty much under the control of your stepmother.
Right.
And what's she like?
She was really a kind woman for a long time, and then just her relationship with my father put her through so many changes. She got pretty neurotic, and she fell into the same patterns as him. Keeping watch on us and sort of exaggerating the importance of things we failed to do or whatever.
Right.
And we also were getting in a lot of trouble. I was becoming somewhat of a thief around that part of the last town we lived in.
Was your older brother encouraging this side of you, or was this something you fell into on your own?
A bit. I was doing it more for him at times because he was always getting himself in trouble money-wise, and I had to bail him. He had to bail himself out, so I started burglarizing schools and stuff like that, and selling things.
Well, what's the financial situation of your family at this point? Is it
at this point,
middle class, or?
Yeah, I think they always, for the most part, they always were. My mother, it goes up and down. Sometimes she's doing work that she earns a lot of money, but then there's times that she doesn't have any money at all. So it's sort of back and forth.
So this was vandalism, not like trying to get money to buy things, but just teenage.
Well, I was robbing pocketbooks from teachers in school and stuff like that. It was just like a constant thing. Wherever I saw money, I would do my best to get it. But a lot of it was just to play around with. At times it was to bail my brother out, but other times it was just to have money to do things with because we never had any. We were never given any by my folks, so. And I don't know. We got caught a couple of times. And
who caught you?
Usually store managers or people like that if we were doing things in supermarkets. We'd walk into supermarkets and walk out with huge bags of stuff. They're pretty 16s. Funny at times.
Right. So you're like 9, 10 years old when this is going on?
Well, I became 9 after I got to New York. Like when I was about 8 and a half, my father put us on a bus. We got to came to New York, and I was living with my mother. And then at some point, things just turned sour really quick because she couldn't deal with the responsibility. So my brother started running away. I started running away, and.
Okay, you're talking about your stepmother now, right?
No, this is my real mother.
Oh, your real mother. Okay.
Yeah, here in New York.
Okay.
So, anyway, when I first time ran away, after I hit New York, I was living in this trailer that this gas station was trying to rent out, and I had this street buddy that I was hanging around with who lived in that neighborhood. That's how I knew about it.
What was his name?
John. He's some kid that I met in summer camp just a few months before. And he was just totally nuts too. His whole family situation was crazy. He had these brothers that were, I guess, in the army and had just come back from Vietnam. They were like wearing stuff like Con Killer T-shirts, and they'd pick him up by his hair and stuff like that. They were just real sick people.
Right.
And so he was pretty twisted, and there were all these power games that he would play, and with me, and that I would have to do certain things in order to keep him from doing other things, which usually were violent acts of some sort or another.
Right.
So after a few weeks or a couple of weeks of living in this trailer, he came in one time, and the last time he came in, he set it on fire, and it was like this game. He'd set the bed on fire, and I'd put it out, and then he'd laugh, and then he'd set it on fire again, and it was like running back and forth, and finally I just had enough of it. And he set it on fire, and I just sat there, and we both sat there, and we're watching this thing slowly go up in flames, and he's waiting for me to react, and I just got up and left, and took my belongings and walked out, and the gas station guy came running and screamed his head off, and I said, "There's some nut in there, just set the place, the trailer on fire." So he got grabbed, and I disappeared, and that was the last time I saw him for about a year. Resumed contact with him after that.
But you took off that afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, right.
Where?
I don't remember. I might have come back to Manhattan. Yeah, I did come back to Manhattan because I was, at that point, I was where 42nd Street, and there was, I mean, I'd been picked up one night down there before I'd run away.
Mm-hmm.
So I was walking around, and some guy offered me money, and I got him to give me the money, and I was supposed to go with him to this hotel or this
Right.
house or something. And
Right.
midway there, I just turned around and took off, and I mean, I knew different points like Coney Island, places like that.
You're out on the streets around Midtown, hanging out?
Well, it was an on and off thing. I mean, I would go back home and live at home for a while, and then run away again. And that time that I hit 14 or 15, I ran away for good, and I didn't go back. But the whole period prior to that, it was just on and off. It depended on what the situation at home was.
Who's supervising you at this point? I mean, is it your mother, your stepmother?
My mother. But
What's your relationship with her like at this point?
Well, I haven't seen her in almost 2 years. It's going on 2 years. But sometime, by the time I hit 17, I got contact with her again, and we've had some, there's been some good times, and done a lot of driving around together and stuff, and just talking, and sort of try to clear out some of the things in the past, and it's worked to an extent, but I don't know what it is. I just can't, I find it really hard to deal with being in contact with relatives in general, because it's either they want to live through me, or they somehow think that I have some big answer to things in their life, and it's just like too much pressure. It's just something I can't do. So I basically don't maintain any contact except for occasional letters to my brother and my sister, and that's it.
Where are your brother and sister now?
My brother's somewhere in Jersey. He's married, has a kid, and works, I don't know what kind of job he works. I think it's for Automobile Association or something like that. My sister has been living in Europe for about 9 years, and she's a model, and she was like a secretary and everything here, and then about 9 years ago she decided she wanted to travel, so she became a model, and for the most part that's all she's been doing is traveling and living in Europe. She likes Europe much better than here.
Okay, so let's talk about let's talk about street life on Times Square. You have any buddies you hung out with there?
Yeah, there was every couple of years I'd usually be with somebody else, and we hang around with somebody else, but because the person was arrested, I mean the previous person was either arrested or else they just gave it up, or else they just disappeared. And
were these like close friends, or were these like
pretty close. I mean they were people I spent most of my time around, and we would search out things together, like places to sleep if we didn't have any money or if things weren't going well, and just run around together and just get into trouble together or have fun together or whatever. And I don't know. I think most of the people I hung out with were pretty crazy. They were just the last person I hung out with on the streets was just definitely a nutcase. I mean, he would snap suddenly out of the. I mean, he was like one of the most calmest people I'd ever met. I mean, really good reasoning about a lot of things, and just usually pretty cool about things, and then suddenly would just snap and try to kill somebody. I mean, just turn around, and the last 2 times that it happened, it was, I was the one he was trying to kill, so I forgave it the first time, but the second time I just gave it up.
Did you have a weapon on him, or?
Yeah, I have like a cut inside my eye. I mean, a chip taken out of my pupil from the last time that he was trying to hit me with this huge slab of marble, which he finally managed to do. Broke the glasses and whatever. But
Has that impaired your vision at all, or?
No, it does strange things too. It's like it's hard to explain. It's just that I can see the cut. When I look at certain kinds of light with my glasses off, I can see the cut, and it's like a big black spot that just sort of blocks out any kind of light, except for I don't really notice it too much with just wearing glasses.
What date was that? When did that happen?
Sometime in, I think, maybe early 70s, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Right.
so but from 65 to 71 or so, is that the period when
72, 73, something.
you're out on the streets? So this is during you're not down in the East Village where the whole hippie thing's
Well,
going on.
yeah, I came down here at one point. I was living with this ex-con and the last street buddy that I was with. And we were both living with this guy who was out of his mind too, but he
Right.
was pretty easy to deal with.
Right.
And he had a place right across from the Bowery Mission on 3rd Street. And that was sometime late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, early 70s. And
So-
yeah, it was all hippies, and
Yeah,
it was sort of like
Galahad.
the last remnants of the hippies, actually.
Did Galahad's Crash Pad? Did you know that?
No,
whole thing?
no.
That was like 11th Street, I think.
No, I never got involved in that stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, I used to go to the Beans and the stuff like that. I mean, when I was little, just because I could get high. But
Of course,
I
it was
didn't-
pretty tense neighborhoods still around here. There were a lot of gangs and stuff, right? A lot of Puerto Rican gangs down in the village.
yeah, it's funny. I didn't notice that. I didn't notice that much of that. I mean, I saw a lot of colors and stuff, but
Mhm.
not. I mean, I had no big awareness of gangs. I mean, except when I'd go up into the Bronx, and that's where it seemed to be really happening.
Mhm.
But I don't know. 3rd Street was great. It was I really enjoyed it. I lived there for a few months, and then the guy kicked us out, so we had to
Mhm.
start looking for other places to live. But I mean, we were like, after we got kicked out and before we hooked up with this guy, we were living I lived in this halfway house for ex-cons. And I was the only person in the place who wasn't an ex-con, but they decided that I was close to it, that I was close to becoming a con, so they let me in. So I did that. I actually did that for 2 years, but over a period of time. I mean, it added up to about 2 years, and that was pretty interesting. I mean, it was some really neat people, and the
Well-
situation was a pretty easy one.
Were you doing any serious crime this time? Or?
Well, when I was with the last street, when I was with this last guy that I was hanging out with, I was pitiful at crime. I mean, I could, steal things easy, and I was good at that, but we would try to mug people and things like that, and it was just ridiculous. I mean, I'd always go right up to the last second, and just before I was about to do it, I just couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And I mean, we planned these elaborate, like, 2-day plans of,
Mhm.
just casing the store out, electronic stores and
Mhm.
stuff, and getting whatever weapons we could, which usually meant, like, shoplifting cleavers and,
Mhm.
I mean, the most menacing weapons we could find, since we couldn't get a hold of guns or anything. And we'd even go so far as to get into the store, and this guy would know something was about to happen, and he'd be like shaking behind the counter and saying, "Can I help you guys?" This and that. And I mean, it'd be all the way up to the last second, and then I'd just turn around and I'd walk out because I couldn't go through it. It was just too scary.
And so your friend would come up behind you, screaming, yelling at
Oh
you?
yeah, I mean, I got so much shit. But I mean, I was hanging around with this gang of transvestite. They were like semi-gangsters.
Mhm.
There were a band of them, and they would rip people off all over town.
Mhm.
And this guy knew some of them from jail, and they were pretty kind. I mean, they took care of us a lot,
Mhm.
and we were the only two who weren't into being transvestites or anything. So they sort of put us on this pedestal and took care of us, fed us, let us sleep at their places whenever they had one. If they had hotels for periods of time. And anyway, they would get really furious, and they were just
Furious at you?
that I didn't follow through on some of these things.
Mhm.
And
Describe this gang to me. I'm interested in these people.
they were just a pretty twisted bunch of vicious drag queens. That's about as well as I could describe it. I mean, they were into. I mean, their sense of justice and or giving somebody their just dues was just so crazy.
Well, how old were these guys?
Oh, up to their 30s. I mean,
And
they
they were
ranged from about
white, black, Puerto Rican.
mostly black,
Mhm.
and there was a couple of white, but it's mostly black. And they ranged from like about 20 to 30, somewhere there in age. And a lot of them had spent a lot of time in prison. That's where this guy Willie that I knew him from. And he by the way, his whole story was that he was put in a foster home, and he went through like about 7 sets of parents, and they just for some reason or another kept getting rid of him and sending him back. him go out, wouldn't let him see, you know, anything. It was just, you know, this forced confinement. And he spent, I don't know, about 6 years in jail or something, because he was pretty young when he did it. So these people were, some of, like, two of them were going to be transsexuals, and supposedly, I don't even know if this is true or not, but one of them had gone through half the operation or had his balls cut off or something, and was forever trying to get up the money to to finish the operation, but and would get sort of hysterical about it. And, I mean, I remember one night waking up in the after, like, we'd go for days and days without sleep, and also at times days without eating. I mean, it was
that amphetamines or?
no, we had almost no contact with drugs.
That's
I didn't do
strange.
drugs until I left all that behind, and then I started hanging out at like I started working at Danceteria, the first Danceteria, and that's when the first time I started doing drugs.
Mhm.
But that hasn't been a constant thing in my life. So I don't really, not too interested in it, just once in a while.
Mhm.
But I remember going to sleep after not being able, not getting to sleep for a few days, and other than nodding out on stoops or something, but waking up and this guy was just, I mean, he had tits at that point. He was taking hormones and everything, and he was just sort of crying and sitting in front of a mirror, smearing the shit on this makeup and stuff on his face, talking about this operation, how he, now that he had his balls cut off, he couldn't get it up anymore. And I mean, it's really twisted. It was just like a hallucination. So it was scenes like that that just got really desperate. And I don't know, I was pretty out of it. But you know, they were kind when they could be. They were some really good people in there. They were just sort of like, if they got pissed at somebody, they, you know, if somebody did them wrong or what they considered was really wrong, they would cut them up, and just so that they'd have scars for the rest of their life to remind them that they did, you know, this person wrong or whatever. And that was their approach to justice. You know. So anyway, I finally, after the second fight with this guy, I just dropped it all behind. That's when I left the streets, and I moved back home for about a month, and got a job in a 5 and 10, and just got an apartment with an old friend from school, and I mean, just slowly started trying to pull it back together. It was really tough though, because one of the things, coming off the streets and trying to get a job, no matter how stupid the job is. I mean, I'd go for jobs like loading stuff from warehouse docks. I mean, things that you really don't need any kind of education or anything for. And these people, as soon as I walked in the room, I mean, I'd have clean clothes on, you know, or whatever I could afford at the time, and I'd walk into a room, these people would just like visibly go like that. I mean, it's like, it's an energy that you carry with you, which is why it's just so ridiculous when I hear people, or I've heard people, I mean, all my life, thinking that people who live on the street, like, you know, whether it's winos or runaways or, you know, people from jail or whatever, you know, that people think that it's just that easy, that you just go get a job and, you know, build your life again, and you don't, because it's like, whether you're coming out of jail, whether you're coming off the street, or any of these things, it's like, there's an energy that you carry that people intuitively pick up on, and whether they know it or, you know, what it is or not, they immediately reject you. And I remember there were times when I was on the street where I was trying to go straight and just get a job and everything else, and I was told no to just the simplest things. Yeah. And I mean, I'd changed my appearance, and I had enough sense to at least think I knew what I should say to these people or whatever in order to get the job. And I read a lot, so I was fairly intelligent. I mean, it's just...
Right. So you read a lot during this period while you were on the streets and everything?
Yeah.
Like, what were you reading?
Well, I started, when I turned about 16, I started reading Burroughs and Genet and people like that, which I was just turned on to by some guy who brought me up to a hotel room up in a hotel that he lived in all the time up in the 70s, and he had all these books around, and he just gave me a couple of them. And I mean, it was forever. There was absolutely nothing to do every day other than either go steal food or look for food, or else try to get new clothes, because like whenever our clothes were dirty, we'd just go to Macy's and change into new ones in the dressing room and walk out, you know, and leave the dirty ones on the hangers. It was like, you know, this constant recycling of the, you know, whenever we need something, we just went and stole it or whatever. But this guy, and there was nothing else to do. I mean, we'd sit up all night long in like Silver Dollar coffee shop down in the village, down by the Hudson, which was pretty much the hangout for a long time. And so anyway, I started reading a lot, and that's also what gave me sort of impetus to get off the streets, because it was just like reading experiences that seemed so extreme, but somehow these people had made something of it. You know, whether it was like writing or, you know, whatever. Just their philosophy towards things seemed to be encouraging. I mean, that one could make something out of oneself, or, I mean, at least that's how I felt at the time. I don't really think like that too much right now, but it got me off the streets.
What do you mean when you don't think like that now?
Because I'm not sure what it is for one to make something of themselves. I mean, I know what I grew up with, or, you know, like some of the values that were instilled in me when I was pretty young. I mean, at least in early contacts with my mother. And, I mean, given what the world is, or what it seems to be, it just, I don't know how much any of that means anything anymore, about trying to make something of yourself or stuff like that. So it's just sort of like, it sounds hokey.
Like the bourgeois sense of making it.
Yeah. I'm gonna just chain smoke, so excuse me.
You're a constant chain smoker, or just during interviews?
Well, yeah, I guess just during this. But I smoke a lot. I'm giving it up after this next show opens.
So let's talk about the transition from a street kid, you were like a preteen street hustler to somebody who tends bar at Danceteria. How did you make that?
Well, I didn't tend bar at Danceteria.
No.
I got a pretty shitty job at Danceteria. I ended up getting to know Jim Fratt just slightly, and he was hanging around. I mean, I fell into a group of writers who lived out in right across the bridge in Brooklyn, and they let me live at. There was like 3 or 4 of them living in this enormous place, like 10-room house or apartment, and they gave me. They were just writers, and they'd write poetry, they'd write prose and performance stuff and things like that. Some of it really exciting, some of it, you know, just sort of classical stuff.
Are they still around?
They are. They're pretty scattered now. They're all over the States, and some of them have turned into Buddhists and gave up their pens for little drums or something. So they're all carrying on in some way or another. But anyway, this was when I hit 20. These guys let me move into their place, and it was great. It was just, you know, it was a really exciting atmosphere, because there were a lot of creative stuff going on, and they were real encouraging back. That's when I was doing the most writing.
This is what set up for you to do your own book.
That's where the book came out of. After about a year, like when I hit 21, I started putting that book together, because I'd been writing all these letters and travels to friends and everything, and I'd write these monologues into them, because they were just, you know, things I'd just heard like half hour before or whatever. And at some point, one of these guys, because I'd go away and come back to this place and travel and stuff, and one of these guys noticed that I had a bunch of these things and suggested getting them together, so I did. And I've written them ever since, and I still write them occasionally. But it was weird. It's like at that time, I would search out those situations where I'd meet those people by just hanging out in the worst parts of different towns and stuff, or the harshest parts, or the most transient parts. And you know, I would look for these people and, you know, search them out and talk to them and hang out with them and everything. But it seems at this point that it's like things that are extreme like that are so constant in my life. I mean, just, you know, people that I run into, people that I know around here, that it's hard for me to even write them down anymore, because it's become such a daily thing that I just hear the most wildest things that it almost doesn't even occur to me anymore to write most of them down.
Why do you think you'd want to go travel around and find these characters?
I guess mainly because they're basically people who made the most sense to me. I mean, in the way that they lived their lives. It wasn't, I mean, I felt distant from it because I was pulling away from it, and after pulling away from it, I don't think you can sort of slip back into it. It's just, I mean, you have to totally abandon everything if you're going to seriously live like that. And so, I don't know, most of the people that I started getting involved with are the situations I'd find myself in, or the people that who would invite me to their houses or whatever through jobs that I had or whatever. I couldn't relate to most of them, mostly because I was carrying that around, all those experiences and stuff. And it'd be like sitting in a party and all these people started gabbing around about stuff that just seemed really boring or whatever, or stuff that wasn't in my frame of reference or weren't part of my experiences, so I couldn't relate to it all. So I was always seen as this shy kid who sat around and never had anything to say. But really, I mean, the only thing I could possibly talk about was, all these situations that I'd been in, things that I'd seen, and it was just too much for most of those people that couldn't deal with it. So, like, the only sense of identity that I had, I could get reaffirmed by being with these people. It was just, they were interesting to me. They were something so outside of everything that I was becoming involved with that it was just the only thing that gave me any kind of pleasure or whatever, just hanging out in those areas or seeing the things that were happening. So I like the streets, and it's a constant thing for me. There's no specific areas at this point. There used to be, but it's now. I spend a lot of time just walking around at night till late hours, just up and down and across town and wherever. And I just like the things that I see that just occur. I see a lot of violent stuff too, but it gets extreme after a while. There seems to be so much violence out there, like after a certain hour. I just keep running into it. But anyway, I enjoyed getting close to some of those people, or just at least, the stories that they would tell me.
So those, you say there was 3 writers in Brooklyn, or 3 of those guys?
Yeah, there was about 4 or 5 altogether.
Do you remember the names, or was there one in particular who influenced you, or?
No, actually, none of them really influenced me, because they were writing very different stuff. I mean, the things that they were writing were more part of what they were living at the time, which is different from me. But it was just sort of their excitement for doing it that was really infectious. And this one guy, Michael Murray, that's somebody you probably never heard of, but he's living up in Canada right now. But he was the wildest, because he went through a really heavy street period. I mean, in his teens and everything, and became a junkie for a long time, and then just left all that behind. It was really good about not doing junk or whatever. Morais. But he is a really good writer. He's been doing stuff up in Canada. I mean, performance and plays and things like that. But he was one of the most interesting, and that's who I originally connected with. He was the one who originally got me into the place. And he was pretty encouraging about just about anything I ever did there. But he had been through, I think, more extreme things than I've ever been through.
Really?
Yeah.
You mean from junk, or?
Just his street periods. I mean, because he was about 7 years older than I am. And the times that he went through, those experiences were, I couldn't even begin to describe, like, some of the stuff that he's told me. It's just really outrageous. So anyway.
So let's update it. During this whole period, like between talking about 75 until the present, you could cover what happened. Were you drawing through this?
Yeah, I was drawing
always?
Since I was. Yeah, always. Because I started drawing in Jersey when I was about. I can remember drawing a lot around kindergarten. I mean, going all the way up through, it was just always encouraged by different art teachers that I had and stuff. And
like what kinds of stuff were you doing?
Pretty stupid things. I mean,
like cartoons or Marvel comics?
Giant figures, and I'd cut these giant things out of construction paper and glue them together until they became life size, and they were like figures and animals and stuff like that. I mean, that was the earliest stuff I can remember. And then at some point, like in 2nd or 3rd grade, I was doing a lot of appropriation stuff, early appropriation stuff. But I was like tracing all these things out of underwater books, so like marine life, in the deepest part of the ocean, and telling kids that I this is from my imagination. This is what I drew, and
Mm-hmm.
they were so hokey because I can still remember them. And they were so badly traced that
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how anybody could have believed it. That anyway, I was doing that for a long time. And then at some point, somebody put me on the spot and said that they didn't think that I had drawn these things, and if I did, then go ahead, draw this or that. And so I was on the spot, so I drew it, and I was really surprised because it actually came out okay. So from that point on, I just started drawing whatever I thought of, or and it changed. It's gone through changes. I mean, I was for some reason really interested in animals. I mean, most of my life, especially like real exotic stuff like monitor lizards and all these African oddities. And I was reading books about people going through jungles in Africa and collecting specimens of all these various amphibians, reptiles, and stuff. And so I draw a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, I draw like jungle scenes with these lizards chasing people and shit like that. And it was just, I mean, those were the things that I was interested in. And when I lived on the streets, I would draw quite a bit. I mean, I'd just get paper and pens, like big pens, and I would draw these really fine line things. And they were good examples of psychological torment. I mean, they were just like twisted drawings.
Like, give me an example of what you did.
People choking each other, and then like something like a drawing. I can remember one drawing. I did this long flight of stone stairs that went all the way up to this tiny little doorway, and there was this real ominous little figure standing at the top of the stairs, and all this red background behind him, like light coming into all this blackness. And it was.
Who was the guy at the top of the stairs?
I have no idea, but it was just. I mean, for some reason that's a vivid one. But they were just. I mean, they were pretty depressing drawings. And after, I remember at some point in junior high school, I got a medal for at the end of the year for drawing or something like that. But I mean, it's been a consistent thing that I've always drawn. But there were periods of time, like when I started writing and hung around with these writers, they were publishing magazines and stuff, and the ones who were publishing magazines didn't particularly care for what my writing was because I was just starting and it was pretty weak. And so they were always asking me for drawings to publish. And after a while I got sick of that because they wouldn't accept the writing, so I just stopped drawing for about 2 years. And eventually they started asking me for writing and things like that for these magazines. And at that point I picked up drawing again.
What were the names of these magazines?
They were stuff coming out like Brooklyn College and this magazine up in, I can't remember what part of New York it is. It's right near Woodstock. It's Cold Spring Journal. This guy, Charlie Plymell, he's sort of like one of the early beat figures. And he was putting out a lot of stuff that mixed really well-known writers with unknown writers, so he published some things. And I mean, it was just, sometimes independent things. Nothing, I don't think that made any sort of waves, for what they were. It was just, I mean, at that time, I remember there was tons of small press things happening. This was just some of them. But I started doing, while I was living out there in Brooklyn, I was doing some much larger pieces. And I started doing large work that was collage and painting and things like that. And it was just mostly just for amusement and stuff. I mean, it wasn't anything that was too serious. And I don't know, I mean, actually, the whole painting thing's only like 2.5 years old at the most. I mean, that I've actually been quote-unquote painting. And it was just by accident, really, that I started doing it. Cause
how did you get into the current, like, nightlife scene, like, Farad? How did you make that connection?
Well, some of these people who were part of that circle of literary people lived here in New York, and one of them was Emilio Cubiero, who he's a performer, writer, really great writer. And he just finished playing in that Charles Ludlam play. I forget what the name of it is. Some opera singer. But he was in a band that Frat managed early on called Hot Lunch, which wasn't that good of a band. I remember seeing they were okay. I mean, I just don't think he needed to be performed behind music. He was a great reader, great poet, just by himself. I mean, very intense images, very intense street stuff. And So it was him and this guy, Jim McLaughlin, who's now a Buddhist beating a drum somewhere in either India or somewhere in the East Village, who was a pretty extreme performance artist at the time. I mean, extreme in terms of, just, I'd never seen stuff like that. It was almost like very early rap stuff. I mean, really fast, rhythmic, rhyming sentences, but they were just very intense, on the edge images. I mean, things of mostly of homosexual like subculture and radical stuff. I mean, it was talking about guns and anarchy and this and that. I mean, on and on. And I got involved in a couple of those performances where I acted out parts in the background, because he'd do them against these huge, sort of totally crazy sets of couches and things upended. And anyway, so sometimes we get together with these people for dinner, like a bunch of them would get together in somebody's house for dinner, and Frat was showing up, and I'd always be hearing him arguing about politics with somebody, and it at the time it really impressed me. I mean, I thought this guy was really, really cool, very straight, and, I mean, straightforward with his views, and very, I mean, it sounded good, and so at some point I told him I needed a job, and he had just opened Danceteria, and so he said, okay, so he made me a busboy there. And so I was a busboy there until it got raided, and after it closed down. But
you still know Fred at all? I heard he's fallen over at times.
Yeah, I think he's in some sort of trouble with some mob or another.
Right. Sure.
But no, I never became close with him, because as soon as I started working for him, I mean, the first day at work, I remember we had this real friendly relationship, and he came through the door and I said, "How you doing, Jim?" And he just gave me this look of attitude and kept walking. It was my first experience with his multiple personalities. But I think, I mean, he's done some good things. I think he's done some really great things for some people, and I think there's a side of him that's really difficult to deal with. I was playing in this band called Three Teens Kill Four, and this girl, Julie Hare, that plays in that band, still does. And I were doing, we're making posters and stuff for the band for different gigs, and we started using stencils, and that's where that burning house came from, and stuff like that. And after a while, we started doing some stuff in the street together.
What were you playing in that band?
Mostly tape recorder. I mean, it was a little pocket tape recorder. I'd record stuff in the street, off of media, and things like that.
And where did this band appear?
Played just about every club in the city. Any club that we could get into, we played in.
CBGB's and the Mud Club.
Yeah, Mud Club. A lot of Mud Club gigs and Danceteria and stuff like that. Tier 3, I think we played once before it closed. Yeah, we did. In fact, that was our first gig. And it came out of that when Danceteria got raided. Some of the people who were working there we did this benefit thing and tried to raise money for people who couldn't pay their rent because they didn't get any money. Hadn't been paid by Jim Farad or Rudolph, and so we had this benefit, and some of us got together and formed a band just for that benefit, and the reaction was so good that we continued it.
How many people are in the band at this point?
At this point, there's 4.
Who are they?
Doug Bressler, Julie Hare, Brian Butterick, and Jesse Holtberg. But there were 5, and then I left, and they're thinking about adding a drummer or something. And they've sort of changed since I left. It was like a real raw band, and very weird music. I mean, it just swung all over the place and drew from all over the place, and sort of politically charged in some way or another. I mean, sometimes politics are really vague, but it was just songs about the street, about people, situations, bank robberies, and all this kind of stuff. And we recorded a pretty raw album that, I mean, I get embarrassed by it. It still contains some good stuff in it.
Do you have that record here?
Yeah.
Well, can I see it?
Yeah. I think it's out of print. But we recorded it like on almost no money in record time. I mean, it was like first takes of studio. So it's,
Is it alright if I listen to this? I'll bring it back to you.
yeah, sure. I mean, there's stuff on there I'm really embarrassed by, but I mean, at least stuff that I did.
This
most of
thing
the-
has a lot of your work on it. At least we see the house here. We see. What's the date of this?
I think it came out a year and a half ago or something like that, maybe 2 years ago. Can't remember.
Well, what the impetus to get this house up was to advertise the band? Was that the original?
No, it was. We were just doing like symbol stuff for the background of posters, because I mean usually if we do Xeroxes, we Xerox images that we felt sort of identified with things that we're working with our energies. And the house thing came out on the one poster that we printed. And it was just like we do spray paint posters. And then soon after that, me and Julie started collaborating and doing stuff in the street. We did this thing at Castelli's on 420. We were starting to do these action installations.
Which was described as.
Well, we ran in there and spray painted stencils in the hallway, and then dumped like 100 pounds of fresh bloody cow bones from 14th Street up and down the stairs, and then took off. And we were starting to do stuff like that around. And then at some point, I was withdrawing from the band, and I was working more with images, and I was just doing stuff in the street by myself. But it was like stuff that I felt was specifically for the street at the time, and it wasn't that I see myself as a street artist, or that I consider myself that at all, because I don't. And then I occasionally do something in the street if it's just something that occurs to me to do, and it looks like it works. But anyway, so I was doing that for a while, and I was doing all these abandoned cars around here. I was filling them up with images, because they leave them untowed for like months at a time. This was before all the serious change started happening around here as far as gentrification. But these cars would be sitting on the Bowery and on 4th Street, 3rd Street, 2nd, all the way down, just wheelless cars. And so I would stencil all over them, fill all the body with images. And they'd tell them almost immediately as soon as that was done. So anyway, I was doing that, and some guy had seen him who was curating a show called Fast, which was basically a bandwagon show. And at the time I was pretty naive about galleries. I mean, I still am to an extent, but not so much anymore. But I was just naive about a lot of that stuff. And this guy called me up and he says, you want to be in you want to put a painting in a show? So I said, okay. So I got a couple of big masonite boards and worked out some images that I'd been thinking about. What they did was they bought some paper things from me, because I'd been working on sort of like a piece of paper about 2 by 3 feet, and doing spray paint images that were like from projections of photos that I'd taken, because I take a lot of pictures. And so I enlarged these things and made this sort of 4 by 8 foot painting, and that was the first bona fide painting that I'd done. And the reaction to it was pretty good, and I really enjoyed working like that. I really enjoyed working that big. It was like a whole new thing for me.